Do you guys realize what a dumb timeline we are actually living in here? I mean, Donald Trump lost the 2020 election after he tried to steal it. Then he staged an insurrection against the United States. And then 4 years later, we elected that same idiot to the Oval Office. Now, that story would be crazy on its own, but then you realize that Donald Trump has a new vice president this go-around because during said insurrection, he could care less about whether his vice president was hung by the insurrectionists. Now, you might expect that somebody like Mike Pence would be a bit more clear-eyed about the dangers of Donald Trump, but no. That does not appear to be the case. And he recently received an award for his courage in certifying the 2020 election, and then he gave one of the strangest interviews you might expect somebody like Mike Pence to give. I mean, here he is running defense for Donald Trump's recent comments about whether or not he needs to uphold the Constitution. If you guys do appreciate my work, please do remember to subscribe.
When President Trump was asked if he thinks that he has to uphold the Constitution, he said, quote, "I don't know." Is there any doubt in your view that the president must uphold the Constitution?
Well, we all take the same oath, which is we put our left hand on the Bible and raise our right hand. And we swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And despite our enduring differences about my duty 4 years ago, I believe President Trump understands that well. Honestly, Caitlin, I saw a bit of that clip, and I think the president was simply saying that he didn't yet know what his lawyer's view of that question was.
How is it possible that this is his answer? Donald Trump has shown no fidelity to the Constitution. He has shown no fidelity to our rule of law. And Mike Pence should be the person in the world that would know this best, right? I mean, Donald Trump literally tried to overturn a free and fair election by riling up a mob of his supporters to try to stop the certification of that election. And Mike Pence wants to say that, oh, of course, Donald Trump didn't really mean what he said there. He was just saying that he didn't know where his lawyers stood on it. You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. These people are crazy people. He then goes on to lightly speak out against Donald Trump and his insane tariffs.
So now as I see this administration, I do have concerns that with the president's call for broad-based tariffs against friend and foe alike, that ultimately the administration is advancing policies that are not targeted at countries that have been abusing our trade relationship, but rather are essentially new industrial policy that will result in inflation, that will harm consumers and ultimately harm the American economy. So again, I want to be clear. When it comes to China, when it comes to decades of trade abuses, my view always is free trade with free nations. That we ought to be engaging our trading partners across the free world to lower trade barriers, lower non-tariff barriers and subsidies. But when it comes to authoritarian regimes, we ought to get tough, stay tough, and demand that they open their markets and respect our intellectual property.
You know we are living in the dumbest timeline ever when Mike Pence is the reasonable one. And of course, he is absolutely right here. There are some trade imbalances that we could address with somebody like China. But Donald Trump came in here like a bull in a china shop, and he is just wrecking the entire economy because he wants to put these broad-based tariffs on nearly every single country out there. How is it that we lost this style of conservative to the MAGA movement? I mean, of course, I disagree with Mike Pence on pretty much everything, but he does sound reasonable here, and he does rightly call out Donald Trump for his insane tariff regime. Donald Trump clearly has no understanding of these trade deficits, of how tariffs work, and it will raise prices on the American consumer. And Mike Pence goes on to address Trump's latest comments about how, well, you know, the American people, they don't need $30. They'll be fine with $2.
The quote that he had yesterday was, "I'm just saying that they don't need to have $30, they can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils, they can have 5. Do you think the American people buy that argument?
I have 2 grown daughters. I have 3 small granddaughters. And look, keeping dolls affordable, keeping our kids' toys affordable, that really is part of the American dream. I remember recently the Secretary of the Treasury said that cheap goods was not a part of the American dream. Well, I'm somebody who spent almost my entire life in public service. We lived on our paycheck while we raised 3 kids and put 3 kids through college. Cheap goods are a big part of it. And I think we ought to be candid about that. What I will give the president credit for is conceding the fact that his tariff policies will raise the cost of goods for consumers, whether it be toys or pencils or other products. And I appreciate him being forthright about that.
I honestly can't tell if Mike Pence is making a jab at Trump here, or if he truly believes that Donald Trump is being forthright about how these tariffs are going to raise prices all around the country. And again, Mike Pence is right here. Cheap goods is something that the American consumer has come to rely on. This is part of establishing yourself in our economy, right? That doesn't mean that things are perfect, that trade deals are perfect, but when prices start to rise on like kids' toys, people are not going to like that. People depend on being able to get cheaper goods so they can have a decent standard of living. So it's pretty insane that Mike Pence does sound like the reasonable one here. And I like that he's calling out Trump, that saying that, yes, these tariffs are going to be detrimental to the American people. And I truly wonder whether or not he is actually being honest here about Donald Trump admitting that these tariffs are going to do just that, or if he's kind of taking a jab at Trump ever so subtly right there. Let's go ahead and move on to this one where they talk about Putin and whether or not he is stringing along Donald Trump.
There has been some concern or questions that maybe he's stringing the president along, that he's just slow walking the negotiations with no intent of coming to the table. Do you share that view?
Well, I think President Trump is starting to suspect that. He said not long ago that he was concerned he might be tapping him along, as he says, in that New York parlance. And I think he's right. If I was sitting with the president right now instead of you, I would tell him, follow your instincts on this. That's who this guy is.
Now, of course, Mike Pence is absolutely right here. Donald Trump just doesn't seem to understand that Putin wants to reestablish the Soviet empire. He thinks that he is God Almighty. He thinks he can get Putin to come to the table and do whatever deal that Donald Trump sets on top of the table, and everything's going to be good. And what we have seen since Donald Trump has been in office is that Ukraine has been willing to agree to a ceasefire. And Russia has found every excuse in the book to kind of drag that out and not commit to that ceasefire. Russia is not a good faith actor. And maybe Donald Trump is starting to realize that. Maybe he's starting to realize that he is getting played by Putin. But Mike Pence is absolutely right that he should trust his instincts on this one. Then they turn to the question of January 6th. And I think this is an important question to ask about how he feels about Donald Trump pardoning all the people who beat the hell out of the cops that day.
But I've said 100 times, the only heroes I saw that day were wearing uniforms. When we were evacuated down to the parking garage underneath the Senate, I literally saw Capitol Hill police coming and going through that area, some of whom had injuries, and but none of whom flinched. I mean, it was clear that our Capitol Hill police, the security at our Capitol, was caught off guard by the massive riot that ensued. But their courage, their bravery should be heralded for generations to come, because they secured the Capitol and allowed us to reconvene the very same day and complete our work under the Constitution. I will tell you, I was deeply disappointed to see President Trump pardon people that engaged in violence against law enforcement officers on that day. The president has every right under the Constitution to grant pardons, but in that moment I thought it sent the wrong message.
Yeah, he's exactly right. Nobody contests whether or not the president has the power to do these pardons. But for Donald Trump to come out and pardon the people who staged an insurrection against the United States, I mean, that absolutely sends the wrong message to whether or not violence is going to be tolerated in Trump's America. And Donald Trump pretty much came out and said that, yeah, as long as you are coming out and doing violence in the name of MAGA, well, then I'll give you a free pass. That is absolutely the wrong message to be sending. And now we just learned that he is having meetings with the ex-leader of the Proud Boys. I mean, it is absolutely insane. I give Mike Pence a lot of credit for standing up and doing the right thing that day and certifying the election. I think it took a huge amount of courage for him to do that in the face of Donald Trump's pressure and all of the violence that went down on that day. And I think that Donald Trump coming out and just pardoning everybody after the fact, saying that, yeah, it really doesn't matter if you are violent as long as you are doing it or doing violence in the name of Donald Trump. I think it's a stain on this country's history. And I think Mike Pence definitely deserves this award for the courage. I think it's the JFK courage. I forget what the exact thing is called, but I think he does deserve that award. He did show courage that day. He did the right thing. He stood up for the Constitution. And, you know, Donald Trump just kind of shit all over that when he came out and pardoned all of the J6ers. So let's go ahead and move on to this last clip, because he finished off the interview strong by saying that Donald Trump is in fact bringing good character to the White House.
For me, ultimately, character in public life is about doing what you said you're going to do. And we did that in our 4 years. And I will tell you that in the early days of this new Trump administration, I think the president in many ways has been doing that again. He's delivered on securing the border. He's restored morale in our military, where now recruitment in our military, having been flagging over the last several years, is now exceeding goals in every branch of our service. We took the fight to the Houthis on their soil, on our terms, and fought back after the Biden administration had largely abandoned the region. And I think all those steps give evidence of the fact that President Trump is keeping his word to the American people, just as we did.
I honestly don't know how that can be his answer, trying to claim that Donald Trump is bringing good character to the White House. I mean, this is a guy who was nearly hung on January 6th because Donald Trump lacked the character to just say that he lost the election. He lacked the character to be able to admit to others that he actually lost. He lacked the character to call up Joe Biden and concede the 2020 election. That is the man that Mike Pence is trying to say has good character, saying that, oh, well, he's doing what he said he was going to do. He's bolstering our military. I don't know if Donald Trump deserves any credit for that, but the numbers are better. Maybe you can give him a little bit of credit on the border. But what about all of these other things that he is not doing? Did he bring down prices on day one? Did he go after his political opponents or his perceived enemies with executive orders, basically, you know, going against, saying that he wasn't going to go on a revenge tour like all of us were trying to say that he was going to do? I mean, to claim that, probably the stupidest claim that I've heard in quite some time, that Donald Trump is a man of character. For Mike Pence to be the one to come out and say that, I'm just absolutely shocked. Donald Trump proved on January 6th that he could care less about whether Mike Pence was injured or killed that day. And now you've got Mike Pence, maybe because he's a Republican, maybe because he's a conservative, thinks he has to be in the conservatives' corner. I don't know what is going on here, but Donald Trump is not the man of character that you claim he is. So again, I thought that this was a very, very strange interview from Mike Pence. This is a guy who served as Donald Trump's first vice president, was nearly killed on January 6th during the insurrection as he stood up and did the right thing in certifying that election. And instead of, you know, speaking out a bit more forcefully against this administration and all of the insane things that they are doing, stripping due process rights away from folks, Donald Trump even came out and said he didn't even know if he needed to uphold the Constitution. And instead of speaking out a bit more forcefully, this whole interview was couched in a whole bunch of praise for the Trump administration and what they are doing now, instead of letting Donald Trump have the criticism that he actually deserved. So I suggest you guys go and watch this. It's not exhilarating or anything like that, but it is quite interesting to watch Mike Pence try to, both sides this whole thing, giving Trump all of this credit while saying maybe these tariffs aren't the best thing to do. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. So I will leave it there for now, guys. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share with a friend or two. I very much appreciate that. We are trying to build something here on the left that adequately pushes back against the right-wing media ecosystem that just shovels shit for Donald Trump every single day. So if you do like what I do here, please remember to hit that subscribe button. It is free. And if you guys want to see how the Oval Office meeting went with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and Donald Trump, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.